And good morning to the other commissioners, if I may.
Yes. Our condolences for the loss of your mother on Sunday.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Yes. I hope it hasn't disturbed you to the point where you'll find it difficult to manage the interview.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Thank you. She was full of years, as they say in the Bible, I think. And she just had her 90th birthday, celebrated it with the family, and then she slipped away, which was wonderful.
Okay. All right. Are you relaxed, or should I help settle you down?
I'm quite happy, thank you.
You're quite, all right.
Thank you.
For how many years have you been a judge of the High Court?
Just over 10 years. I was appointed in 2008, November.
10 years, 4 months.
Yes.
And for how many terms altogether have you acted in the Supreme Court of Appeal?
For 9 terms.
Tell us about your state of readiness. I know that you have previously appeared before us, but just impress us.
Thank you. I think I am ready. I've written judgments over a wide range of matters, particularly civil matters, and I think I have sufficient experience both from the bar and from the bench to be able to hit the ground running at the Supreme Court of Appeal. When I've acted there before, I've been able to get judgments out fairly expeditiously. I've also been able to assist other people who have maybe run into too many judgments to write, to maybe relieve them a little bit of that load. I believe that I'm ready to make a contribution.
Why did you join Dell? It's an odd question, but I ask it deliberately.
I can tell you exactly why. I had been involved before that in the YMCA, which was a non-governmental organization. It had as its leadership a predominantly white, paternalistic leadership. Some of us within that were trying to turn it around. It did eventually happen. We formed a joint task group for action against apartheid, both inside the NGO and, of course, in our society. And one felt that space was not being created for black leadership. And so when I came to the bar, I looked at Lawyers for Human Rights. I saw that they were doing good work, but I saw that they were white-led. And I thought, I'm not going to be in a white-led organization again. I want to be in a democratic organization led by black people and lend my services. So that's why I joined Dell as opposed to Lawyers for Human Rights.
So it was partly your rejection of racial discrimination or white supremacy that caused you to join Dell. You wanted to be part of the solution.
Absolutely.
To the challenges that confront the legal profession and, by extension, the nation.
Absolutely. And I wanted to render a service with the transformation project, and I saw Dell as being a fantastic vehicle of opportunity to do that, and I'm very grateful that they accepted me.
Is it a fair statement to make or an overstatement to say that you can therefore discern, you can pick up incidents of disrespect, arrogance, racial discrimination, if there are any, in the environment within which you find yourself?
I believe I'm sensitized to it. I'm obviously not as sensitized as someone against whom discrimination on that level has been practiced. But I do believe I'm sensitized to it, yes.
Over the 9 terms that you've acted at the SCA, did you pick up any such incidents?
There were situations where, on a social level, people congregated together, largely based on a racial demographic. There were sometimes expressions made to me by black members that they felt that they'd been somewhat belittled within situations. I think by and large, with some exceptions, there was an attempt, I think, to make the court something which fitted in with our constitution and our constitutional project.
Whether on the basis of race or seniority, did you pick up some discriminatory practices that relate to how work was done, how colleagues related to one another, sitting in court, deliberating over judgments or exchanging judgments, or even in relation to concurrences or non-concurrences? Did you pick up something work-related that is unacceptable, influenced by any of these dynamics during your acting stints there?
I think if one analyzed, for example, people to whom judgments were allocated, I think that some of the senior people did reserve judgments to themselves which they thought might be matters where they could make an impact. There were those sorts of dynamics. I never got a sense within conferences that people's views weren't being taken seriously. Everybody in every conference I've been a part of has been asked for their views, and people have listened carefully and attentively to them.
And you've never come across a situation where some colleagues are, for a term, not even allocated a single judgment to write, or judgments that they had been allocated are taken from them, given to others, or there is a dissent that they were never warned about in advance?
In the judgments in which I was involved, I don't believe there were any, certainly, dissents where there was no warning. It's a frequent occurrence in the court that when a judgment is circulated, people will comment on it and attempt to suggest improvements. It's happened to me, it's happened to everybody else. And that's a good thing, of course, because we want the court to bring out good judgments. But there have been occasions, I think, where the senior presiding person felt that the person writing the judgment perhaps was floundering and wanted to expedite the process, presumably.
I'm focusing only on abnormalities. Either no comment or comment that is really not designed to help you get it right. And without any meaningful effort to help you get it right. There is then another judgment. Or comments that are discourteous, that are not collegial. It's things that could discourage a colleague who's trying to find his or her feet on the ground, that I'm alluding to. Have you picked up those developments?
I know that some colleagues did feel a bit discouraged by some of those processes. In the judgments in which I was involved, I can think of one such situation. But for the rest, mostly I think people tried to make an attempt at assisting. And I know that the presiding people on many occasions, in fact, called more conferences than normal so that we could deliberate together and together achieve something of which we would be proud as a panel.
What challenges have you seen some of the acting colleagues experience, particularly those who have not had the kind of background, extensive practice up to senior counsel level that you have had? And yeah, maybe I should leave it at that. There will be a follow-up question if necessary.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the gist of that, Chief Justice.
Because you've practiced as an advocate for a long time and even rose to the level of senior counsel,
yes,
you probably found it much easier as a high court judge acting in the SCA to manage the challenges that pertain to judgment writing, but not necessarily so with people who have not had as extensive experience as you have had in their practice of the law. Now, what kind of challenges did these others experience, and how do you think they could be helped through they could be helped to adjust at the SCA level while acting?
Well, I've got to say that I've never found writing any judgment easy. But I hear
it's a question of degree.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. In many judgments where I have encountered new areas of the law, it's required massive effort and massive study and revisiting again and again, and bouncing ideas off colleagues as well. And that would be amplified, obviously, by people who haven't had my experience. In other words, it would make the yards a lot harder for them to run than for me to run. And I recognize that. Hopefully, and I did experience this, there is a willingness to bounce ideas off colleagues and to extend one another's learning. And I've certainly, wherever I've been, I've attempted to make myself available to do that where I'm able to, obviously, because it doesn't mean that I had experience that I'm versed in all the areas of the law that everybody else is versed in. But where I've been able to, I've wanted to try and make that sort of contribution.
President Meyer?
Good morning.
Good
Judge
morning,
Gorven.
President Meyer.
Condolences from me as well.
Thank you very much.
As the Chief Justice pointed out, you have been interviewed by this body a few times already, so I don't really have questions for you. Your prowess as a judge, your collegiality, and your ready willingness to assist colleagues, especially junior colleagues, is on record. I'm going to ask you a question which, in my view, should be no issue at all, but it was put to the previous candidate. It relates to your age, and I preface this question with this comment that I have recently observed retired Justices Mpati, Nugent, and Mohoro in critical commissions of inquiry, and they are considerably older than you, and they did, or well, the country thought they did a sterling job. Do you think you turn 65 in about 2 weeks?
Correct, 19 days' time.
Yeah, should that, and you're competing against, it's only one of your competitors who's older than you. You're competing against younger colleagues. Should your age disadvantage you at all?
Thank you for the question. I don't believe so. In fact, I think it should advantage me for a couple of reasons. It means that I've had experience on the bench. I also have 5 years and 19 days before I have to retire, in which I want to make a significant contribution to that court and to our law, and the development of that law, and the mentoring and bringing forward of both advocates and judges where I can. I believe I'm well suited to do that. That's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is my mother died at the age of 90. My father is 96 and a half. And until he was 95, he was running a very complicated set of accounts. I don't think the Gorven brain fades very quickly.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
On a lighter note, does your father still drive himself?
No, fortunately.
Fortunately.
He only stopped that about 1.5 years ago as well.
I was going to caution because the Queen's husband knocked off somebody recently driving himself.
We're very grateful he stopped.
Commissioner Nyambi?
Thank you, CJ. Morning, Judge.
Good morning, Judge.
As indicated in your CV that you are a lay preacher besides being a judge in the St. Matthew's Anglican Church. Is that right?
That's correct.
What is your view of the impact of the emergence of miracle working churches on the rule of law in the country?
No, I think that's a serious question, in fact. I don't want to knock any churches, but where church leadership sets itself up as God and sets itself up in a power relationship over other people, that is exceptionally dangerous. The way I see our Constitution is that we start from the position where every citizen has equal power and none have power over the other, except where the Constitution accords that power for necessary and significant social purposes in our democracy. And that is why the powers of the legislature and the executive and the judiciary are circumscribed, so that nobody can assert power over others without there being a good, valid, democratic basis for it. And where any church, whether it's the new churches or anyone else, crosses that line, it becomes dangerous to our situation in our democracy.
Thank you. My last question, as the President has indicated that you have interviewed in the past, any other thing that you think you might have missed out in the past that you have to seriously consider this time around?
Well, I think what I would like to say, and I'm sure the Commission is very alert to this, is that the 5 positions which are being filled now amount to, I did a quick calculation, 93 years of experience as judges on the bench. Between those 5 people together, they have served for 93 years. That's a lot of experience to lose in a court in one go. 20% of the court is being replaced. And that, I would like to suggest, might well be a good reason why I can make a significant contribution at this time.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, President Maya.
Commissioner Mpofu. Commissioner Mpofu.
I'm covered. Thank you, President. I just wanted to pass my condolences as well.
Thank you very
I lost
much.
my mother in the last 6 months, so I can feel your pain. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and my condolences to you.
Thank you. But my question was about the age, which has been covered.
Thank you.
Commissioner Norman.
Thank you, President. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Commissioner Norman.
Thank you. In that judgment that you've referred the Commission to, the State versus Mate judgment,
Yes.
this is a fiancé murdering in fact, a guy murdering his fiancée.
Yes.
And then the father of the deceased had made, in fact, had indicated that, look, I want to pursue compensation. I want compensation for my loss. And then the probation officers had also suggested in their report that the father should get 50,000 paid in installments. And you rejected that in your judgment. You don't deal with it. You didn't award that. But the question that I want to pose to you is, what were the reasons for you to reject that proposition? Because your answer then is going to inform my next question to you.
The difficulty in awarding compensation in circumstances where there's going to be a term of imprisonment is how a person might be able to fulfill that obligation.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Then that ties up with my next question, because my next question is, when I looked at Section 300 and Section 297 of the Criminal Procedure Act, it doesn't seem to me that if you are going to be imposing a term of imprisonment, there is room for you to consider compensation at all.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's the reason it didn't
Yes,
get...
because you have to weigh your options and see whether
And
the
it was undoubtedly a matter which deserved imprisonment.
Yes. And again, do you think it would have been appropriate, supposing that you had felt differently at the time, and supposing that you felt that the sections that I've referred to would permit you to impose compensation, would you think that it would have been appropriate, 50,000 for loss of life?
How can you compensate someone for loss of life? Of course, in the civil law, one has to show that compensation is in order to deal with a financial loss. You don't need to do that in this situation, obviously.
Yeah.
But of 50,000 rand of compensation, if the person had been able to pay, even in a deferred basis, I think it would be appropriate, certainly to consider it, along with all the other factors one would need to consider.
Thank you. And then lastly, you've acted as President Meyer has indicated several times at the SCA. What is the unique contribution that you wish to bring? When you act, you contribute to the system. You show your hand in everything that you are doing. What is it that this time round, if you become permanent, you wish to bring to the Supreme Court of Appeal?
I think first and foremost, I would like to bring my humanity. My humanity as regards the court itself, my colleagues, the staff, the persons who appear before me and the litigants, because I think that's ultimately what our Constitution is suggesting should be brought to bear in any situation by a judicial officer, that people are treated as human beings with rights and are given a fair, full audience. And where one can, in fact, make a contribution to other people, one should do so.
Thank you, Commissioner Norman. Commissioner Nokesi?
Chief Justice. I also add to what has already been said, my condolences.
Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
Commissioner, just bring the mic closer to you and on the side that your head turns to when you speak.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Yeah, maybe more towards his side so that as you lean over.
Oh. All right. I note from your CV that you joined Dell way back in 1988. You were already part of that structure.
Yes.
Surely at that stage, there were few white people who definitely identify themselves with those organizations that championed human rights. What were your convictions at the time in relation to the law, the role of the law, and the apartheid?
My convictions were that the law should be used insofar it was able to be used under that system to bring about democracy and transformation and the rule of law and justice. My convictions were that a specific legal contribution could be made and should be made in the practice of one's law.
During that time, a lot of activists were arrested. It was shortly after the state of emergency and when there was still height of apartheid. Any contribution personally that you have made in terms of representing some of the activists in court and whatever contribution that you have made in the pursuit of the struggle?
And we'd had
And
just...
how it helped you today as a judge, that contribution?
We'd also had the 7-day war in the valley, in the Edendale Valley at the time. It was a very, very tense period. I spent a lot of the first number of years of my practice at the Plessis Law Magistrates Court defending people on trumped-up charges relating to homemade firearms which the police were planting in activists' gardens, and in defending those activists who'd been charged by the police with acts which the police thought were against the state interests as they were at the time. We also ran clinics for free legal advice and legal service, and I also made myself available with Dell, other Dell members, to act as a magistrate in the magistrates court at a time. But I spent a lot of the early days of my practice defending activists in that area, and particularly in areas of conflict.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Nokesi. You are excused, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.